Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Strategic Planning Committee meeting here at County Hall on Tuesday, the 18th of March. Have we got any apologies for absence today?
Yes, Chair, we've received apologies from Councillors Foster, Flux, Renner-Thompson and Wallace.
Thank you. Any members got any declarations of interest they wish to disclose?
Thank you, Chair. So, as the Ward Councillor for Ashington Central, I have taken part in the consultation events for the proposed development, which is item number 5 on the agenda.
Thank you. No other declarations of interest? We now turn to determination of planning applications. We've got 3 before us this afternoon. I will just briefly run through the procedure that we follow at our planning committee meetings. As chair, I introduce the application, ask members if they've had sight of any site visit videos. I then ask the planning officer to present the report, give us any updates, changes to recommendations. We then come to the public speaking slot. We have a 5-minute slot for objectors, 5-minute slot for a local member, a parish councillor or county councillor, and then we have a 5-minute slot for the applicant or a supporter. We then have questions from the members to the planning officers, and then we debate the application. We ask for a proposal, we ask for that to be seconded, we then carry out a debate, and then we vote on the application. So, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, page 15 is our first application this afternoon. This is an outline permission with all matters reserved for the demolition of existing buildings and walling and subsequent erection of up to 200 dwellings, including an extra care provision and associated works. And the site address is on the Hexham Middle School site, Wanless Lane, Hexham. So without any further ado, I'll hand you over now to our planning officer, Rachel Campbell. Rachel, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So there are a couple of updates to provide firstly. So since the committee report was finalised, 1 additional representation of objection has been received, so taking the total number of objections to 7. I will read this out, seeing as it hasn't been circulated. On the face of it, it seems a shame to demolish a handsome listed building, part of Hexham's heritage. A pity the main building could not be preserved in the overall scheme to build much needed housing. I hope the houses will include council-owned properties for rent as well as affordable home for purchase. I'd just like to clarify that whilst 4 school buildings are proposed to be demolished as part of this outline application, none of which are listed buildings. Those are currently excluded from the application. And the other update that I wish to make today is in relation to biodiversity net gain. So Habitat Ecology have recommended that a habitat monitoring fee of £4,664 is required and would be secured through a Section 106 legal agreement. Therefore, Condition 40 is to be reworded as follows: to include reference to the habitat monitoring fee and also to remove reference to at reserve matter stage, which was just following some further legal advice. I'll now just read out what Condition 40 will be amended to. No development shall commence until all those with an interest in the land comprising the development hereby permitted have entered into planning obligations with the local planning authority under Section 106 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990. The obligations shall require affordable housing to be provided and the payment of financial contributions towards a habitat monitoring fee and open space, education and healthcare obligations to be calculated in accordance with Appendices D and H and Policies HOU 6, INF 1, INF 5 and INF 6 of the Northumberland Local Plan. Reason: to ensure the appropriate planning obligations are secured for the development in accordance with Appendices D and H and Policies HOU 6, INF 1, INF 5 and INF 6 of the Northumberland Local Plan. So that concludes my update. I shall now move on to the presentation. So outline planning permission with all matters reserved is sought for the redevelopment of the former Hexham Middle School site at Wanless Lane in Hexham to enable the construction of up to 200 dwellings, including extra care accommodation. Matters relating to access, layout, appearance, landscaping and scale are all reserved for future applications at the site. The application site comprises the majority of the former Hexham Middle School site. However, as I've just previously mentioned, the application specifically excludes the Grade 2 listed Fellside building, the Kirtledge listed Gatehouse building and the former Caretaker's Cottage. The application site comprises a mix of previously developed brownfield land and undeveloped greenfield land. This includes school buildings and outbuildings, hard-standing playground and parking areas, internal roads, footpaths, grass playing fields and semi-natural vegetated and landscaped areas. So the Hexham Middle School site Hexham Middle School was relocated onto the redeveloped Queen Elizabeth High School site at Whetstone Bridge Road in Hexham in 2021. Therefore, the application site at Wanless Lane has been redundant since the Hexham Middle School was relocated in 2021. So this here is the location plan. So the site is wholly within the Hexham Conservation Area, and as you can see there, it's predominantly within a residential area of Hexham. There is a relatively small area to the south of North Terrace, I'm not sure if I can point that out on there, but it's kind of to the very northern part of the application site, which falls within Hexham's town centre boundary. The application site is obviously therefore also within the immediate setting of the Grade 2 listed Fellside building and the Kirtledge listed Gatehouse building. So as you can see, the Grade 2 listed building shown on the location plan there is highlighted in yellow, and then the Gatehouse is to the north of that, beyond the playing field, and just sort of excluded outside of the red line boundary there. So the two playing fields and the stretch of woodland along the western site boundary are designated under Policy Imp 5 of the Northumberland Local Plan as protected open space. So just to show you on here, to the east of the site is the residential properties of Wanless Lane and Bongate Court. To the south of the application site are the residential properties of South Park and the headquarters of Northumberland National Park Authority. To the west of the application site is the road of Eastgate, which is also known as the B6306, with also in the northwest corner the properties of King's Mews and Eastgate. And then to the north of the application site there is the residential properties of Vine Court and North Terrace, and also Long Close, with a public car park just beyond that there. So this is the submitted location plan, which obviously shows the application site in red. As I previously mentioned, excluding the Fellside building and also the Caretaker's Cottage and the Gatehouse as well. And then this is just an aerial plan, again just showing how the application site is surrounded by residential properties. As you can see there's the eastern playing field and the western playing field, with the Fellside building to the south, and that sort of hot tarmacked area to the south of the Fellside building is where the tennis courts are. In the northern part of the site is the Beaumont building, and also some other open land around there where there is the current community garden as well. And as you can see, the existing stretch of woodland along the western boundary with Eastgate Road. And then this is the existing site plan. Apologies, it does seem quite faint on there. So moving on. So the application has been supported by several indicative plans. This one is the illustrative master plan and shows the indicative layout. It also shows obviously the areas of open space that will be retained within the application site and also at the edges, including retaining the stretches of woodland to the south and to the west. So this is the land use parameter plan that's been provided. This is an indicative plan. However, the green area shows the open space. This kind of shows it a bit more clearly. And then the yellow shows where development is proposed. Again, just showing that that main stretch of woodland and things is going to be retained. So then this is the proposed density parameter plan. Just bear with me. So this again is just an indicative plan. However, it indicates that the density of the eastern part of the site, which is shown in green, would be 15 to 20 dwellings per hectare. The density of the central part of the application site would be either 30 to 35 or 40 to 45 dwellings per hectare, and is shown by the orange, dark orange colour. And then the density of the western part of the application site would be 25 to 30 dwellings per hectare, and that's shown in the yellow. And then the density of the northern part of the application site, which is where on the illustrative plan, shows where the extra care facility is proposed. And that would be 50 to 60 dwellings per hectare. Again, this plan shows the different storey heights that are potentially proposed, and again, this plan is indicative. So within the eastern and northern parts of the site, which is the light blue area, this would be up to 1.5 storeys in height. And then the dwellings within the central western part of this application site, which is in kind of the dark blue, almost lavender colour, would be up to 2 storeys in height, with then the dwellings in the north and northwestern part of the application site being up to 3 storeys. So it's acknowledged that the storey heights parameter plan and the density parameter plan, along with the illustrative master plan, have all been submitted purely for indicative purposes only. However, they show how the application site could comfortably accommodate up to 200 dwellings, including extra care accommodation, and whilst the proposed development has been identified to cause less than substantial harm to the setting of the listed buildings, it is considered that the public benefits, which are assessed within the committee report, outweigh this level of harm, and that the density and scale of the proposed development, as shown in these plans, has been carefully designed across the site, and having regard to and respecting the scale and character and design of the built form which surrounds it. So then this is also the proposed landscaping strategy plan. Again, this has just been provided for indicative purposes. A design code document has also been provided, and it would be conditioned to ensure the development is undertaken in accordance with that document. So these are photos of the eastern playing field and the Fellside building. So these are taken sort of from the north of the eastern playing field. And then again, these photos are also of the eastern playing field, but taken from more centrally within the site. Looking towards, that's the gatehouse there, which is excluded from this application. And then on the left-hand side in that picture, those properties are Wanless Lane. So these are just some pictures of the gatehouse building, but as I mentioned before, this is curtilage listed and is excluded from this application. And then this is photos of areas to the south of the Fellside building, where the tennis courts are located. With the properties of South Park beyond. This is a photo of the Orchard building, an old school building that was built in the 1980s and is proposed for demolition. And then these are photos of the western playing field. As you can see, the stretch of woodland to the western boundary there. And a glimpse of the Beaumont building there too. So this is a photo of the canteen kitchen building, which is located in the centre of the application site. This one is also proposed to be demolished. And then this is photos of the Beaumont building. So this is identified as a non-designated heritage asset and is proposed to be demolished. So it's recognised that this is obviously one of the buildings that is to be demolished, but whilst the complete loss of such a building is disappointing, it is considered that necessary to allow for the redevelopment of the site, and the proposals would bring back the vacant site back into use. There are also public benefits to the proposal, which have been set out within the submitted public benefits statement and discussed within the committee report. And locally, there is a strong local housing demand in the Hexham area, partly influenced by the restrictions from the town being inset from the Greenbelt. And so it's considered that in the planning balance, the demolition of the Beaumont building is justified, and a condition would be imposed to secure building recording work prior to its demolition. And then these are photos of the nursery building on the site and within the northern part of the site. This is another one of the 4 buildings that's proposed to be demolished to accommodate the development. And then again, some more photos of the northern part of the site. And it's within this area, there's a small area within this northern part of the site that just falls within the town centre boundary. And it's only that small portion of the site that's within that area. And then these photographs are from Eastgate to the west of the site. Again, just kind of showing how the woodland stretches along that boundary as well. And also it also shows that final picture on the right there shows the heights of some of the buildings in that area in terms of where the extra care facility may be located and being of a similar height. And then finally, these are the photos from the access, which is from Wanless Lane. And it's based on the indicative plans, it appears that access is to be used, although this will obviously be determined at reserve matters stage. And finally, just to conclude, the redevelopment of the application site for housing would not be acceptable as a matter of principle when assessed against the open space related national and local planning policies and when having regard to Sport England's objection comments. However, in this particular instance, when weighed up in the planning balance, it is considered that the proposals could be acceptable as a departure from the open space related planning policies, as it is recognised that the proposals are fully supported by both spatial and housing related planning policies, as well as town centre related planning policies. The loss of the playing fields is required in order to facilitate the proposed housing development, and it is recognised that nationally and locally there is need for additional housing, and there is demand in the area. It is also recognised that the playing fields have not been in use for over 3 years, and since the Hexham Middle School has relocated in 2021, and that during that time there was no demand to use the playing fields at the site. Should members of the committee be minded to approve the application, due to the objection from Sport England, the application would need to be referred to the Secretary of State to see whether they wish to call the application in for a decision. In all other respects, such as design, heritage impact, archaeological impact, amenity, highway safety, ecological impact, BNG, loss of trees, drainage, contamination and planning obligations, this outline planning application is acceptable and in accordance with national and local planning policies. The application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to recommended conditions, including securing a planning obligation via a Section 106 agreement and subject to referral of the Secretary of State. Also, just in terms of the conditions, it would include that amended condition number 40. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Very good. Members of the committee, we now come to our public speaking slot. On this application, we have all 3 tranches being used. We've got Wendy Breach and James Swarby speaking against the application. We've got Suzanne Fairless Aitken, local county councillor, speaking. And finally, we've got Tom Gibbons, agent, speaking in support of the application. So I'd now like to invite Wendy Breach, James Swaby to say their bit. Thank you.
On behalf of Hexham Civic Society. Hexham Civic Society has made a detailed written objection. Yes, we support bringing the site back into use, but we object, together with your Built Heritage and Design team, with Historic England, with Hexham Town Council and with Northumberland and Newcastle Society to the current outline planning application, which we believe should be deferred pending resolution of several issues. It is extraordinary that NCC should submit an application for outline planning permission within a conservation area. NCC is contravening its own policies by doing so. Why? If an outline planning application is accepted, then there are threats to the conservation area, the listed building and other heritage assets. The scheme before you proposes demolition of the 1931 Beaumont building and the boundary wall with no tabled scheme for their replacement. Why? NCC's local plan states that outline planning permission will not be granted unless detailed plans, and I quote, contain sufficient supporting information by which the impact of the proposed development on the character and appearance of the conservation area can be judged. And yet the planning officer has stated, whilst the complete loss of the 1931 Beaumont building is disappointing, it's considered necessary to allow for the redevelopment of the site. The 1910 Grade 2 listed Fellside building is not even included in the application, but left aside along with the gatehouse. Hexham has a poor recent history of ignoring or selling into private hands several of our heritage assets. Think the Hexham Union Workhouse, empty for 12 years. Prospect House, developers are in administration. Hadrian House, 90% converted, the building now up for auction. Hexham Station Cottages, leased to an American company, empty and falling into disrepair. The old bus station site lies derelict. A new use must be found for the Fellside building before any planning application is considered. Why not? Civic Society urge this application be deferred until options for reuse of the Beaumont building are convincingly explored.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. James Swaby.
Oh, yes.
On behalf of Hexham Community-Led Housing, we welcome this town centre site for housing, as long as it's the right kind of housing, well-designed, sustainably built, and forming a coherent community. We also share the Civic Society's concerns regarding the exclusion of listed buildings and demolition. Really, the master plan is an incomplete exercise without those being part of it. The Built Heritage and Design Team's assessment that the site should be low density conflicts with the local plan, which calls for higher densities in the most accessible locations, of which this is one. The low density approach is very justifiable around the listed building, but should be increased across the rest of the site to deliver more homes. Hexham's acute shortage of affordable housing is recognised in the planning officer's report, yet the report states there's no requirement to provide above the minimum level of affordable housing provision, and it would be unreasonable to request this. This is very disappointing, as this site is really NCC's last opportunity to significantly dent the affordable homes backlog. The proposed extra care facility, assumptions have been made that this is the best solution for our ageing population. But the public health team argues that there is no evidence of need for extra care. Recent research demonstrates that collaborative housing built around an intentional community provides better quality of life for people as they age and makes less demand on formal care services. We believe this should be considered as an alternative, which would accord with the local plan supporting the principles of active ageing. So we would urge you to defer a decision and take the following three issues into account. The potential futures of the built heritage assets, a well above minimum percentage of affordable homes is agreed, and increased density of homes on parts of the site. Now you have an opportunity here to deliver a groundbreaking scheme of national stature, but I'm afraid this outline application in its current form falls rather short. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. I'd now like to invite Suzanne as the local county councillor.
Thank you.
Suzanne, over to you.
Thank you. I've been campaigning for this site to be best developed for my residents and the wider Hexham community since elected in 21. For most of the time, this site has stood empty. Efforts to put forward community hub, film school, cycling hub, art space, childcare facility have fallen on stony ground. It took added CCTV to stop vandalism of the listed buildings, where there could have been temporary caretakers and residents for public benefit. So 2 years ago, frustrated with progress, Hexham Town Council ran its own resident survey, and the feedback from these forms is the basis for my 2 pleas to members here today. We want homes, not just houses. I'm pleased to say that this Hexham site has finally come to strategic planning. Too many NCC estates remain empty and neglected around the town. There is indeed much to praise here. The footpaths onto Eastgate, the retention of the community garden, the wealth of green spaces around the site, and not forgetting the extra care facility which will allow for patient discharge from overstretched hospitals. Where I have concerns is the tenure of the housing on the site and the ability to claw back the site from developers if the builds aren't delivered. We want homes, not houses. This is a huge site with huge potential, and while I'm a realist and I know that we have to claw money back for the new school build, the site is big enough to take what our neighbourhood plan, the local housing associations and the recent housing needs survey by Coasts and Castles have asked for, namely genuinely affordable family homes and more social housing. According to them, around 500 social homes are desperately needed in Hexham, and without them our town will age and die, as is currently being reflected in the falling birth rates and pan across schools in Northumberland. In Hexham, our first and middle schools are seeing drastically low pupil numbers and therefore funding. We need the influx of families that only these types of homes can bring. This is about the right homes in the right location, and this is it. Indeed, the Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Housing declared in full council last year that this site would be a missed opportunity for Hexham if these local needs were ignored. On record, I have been assured that this site will not just meet social housing requirements, but possibly exceed them by both the leader and the head of planning. I ask that the extra care facility is not included in these social housing percentages. We all know that planning is currently undergoing seismic changes under the new government, and greyfield sites will be seized to meet these local housing needs. If Hexham's need is not addressed here, they will build somewhere else, and that should not be allowed to happen. This is not NIMBYism, this is IMBYism. We actually want houses, just the right kind of homes. NCC has an in-house building wing in Advanced Northumberland who can more than build these houses for us, and would this not be the best solution? Would this not class as best value? It would be invaluable in future-proofing our town. Secondly, I ask for members to condition a buyback or clawback agreement with this application. Hexham does not want another old bus station disaster, for which 8 years is underdeveloped after Tynedale Council sold it with no such agreement in place, and sits after the rest of the high street has been gentrified by historic England like a proverbial sore thumb. So while I support the application, I must ask members to condition a penalty clause or change of developer if the site build has not started in a set time after being contracted, say 1 year. Far too many sites in the town sit unfinished or land banked, and I do not want this to become another. This condition will protect Hexham and show we have learnt from mistakes of planning past. We want homes, not houses. Finally, this administration must start replenishing the lost stock of social homes that have been lost to our communities through Right to Buy. Just as we have like-for-like replacements for fallen trees, then we must ask the same for housing. Imagine if supermarkets did not, say, replace value baked beans after they'd sold out, only leaving high-end branded ones for people to buy. Shoppers would go elsewhere. It's our social responsibility to help address this dwindling lack of supply. We do not want families in Hexham going elsewhere. We want them here. And so I appeal to members and officers to listen to the people, the neighbourhood plan and local councillors who best know their towns. This school once belonged to the families of Hexham, and it needs to go back to the families of Hexham. We want homes, not just houses. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And finally, could I invite Tom Gibbons, the agent, to speak for no more than 5 minutes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. As you'll be aware, the Hexham Middle School site has largely remained vacant since the school relocated in 2021. The site has provided little benefit to the surrounding area and residents given its current condition in the last 4 years. The application in front of you comprises of a set of cohesive, prescriptive parameters set out in the design code, which is conditioned, that will enable a high-quality development to be brought forward on a key opportunity site in Hexham. We've worked proactively with officers and consultees to ensure the development proposal satisfies their requirements and accords with policy requirements and technical considerations. As is set out in the committee report, the scheme would contribute to meeting the housing needs for Hexham, particularly the provision of affordable homes. The current proposals have been carefully compiled to guarantee any future scheme not only respects the character of the site and the local area, but also integrates in an appropriate manner and benefits both future and existing residents. The development will be sustainably located with good levels of accessibility and permeability achieved. As a number of the objectors mentioned, there has obviously been concerns, however, as Rachel set out in her presentation, the design code is conditioned, which sets out a number of design requirements for any future reserve matters application. This has been done on the basis of ensuring a development is done in a sensitive manner given the historic listed buildings on site and the Curtis Leeds listed gatehouse. In terms of density, as Rachel showed earlier, in terms of the density plans, this has been done to ensure that any development is sensitive to that surrounding, and given the officer's recommendation, the parameters submitted are deemed to be acceptable. As I said, the design code will ensure that any future scheme will exceed policy requirements in terms of open space provision, deliver a mix of housing typologies that meet the needs of the community, as well as create a visually attractive and pleasant environment. As is set out in the committee report, all material considerations have been given appropriate weight in the determination process, and officers have concluded that the proposals are acceptable, and we would like to think that members will concur with this position. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, it's now your opportunity to ask questions of our planning officers. Any questions? Georgina.
I don't know where to start with this one. It's just a quick comment. I know it's questions, but often you'll see an application which you don't particularly like, and then you realise there isn't any planning grounds to object to it. This one's almost the opposite. You think, oh, using a school site which is notoriously difficult and it's been redundant housing, good. But then you're listening and hearing all these objections and good planning grounds as well articulated by the speakers. So it is a tricky one. My question, though, is, I've got a couple of quick ones linked. I mentioned at the previous meeting how often consultees seem to be easily beaten down by our planning department. You know, they object and then, oh, go on, whatever. Sports England have been quite robust in their argument that it doesn't comply with policy. And I've read again the sort of commentary in this planning report. I have to say, I do think we're in very thin ground with that. So I just want some more comments on that, because that's obviously an important. And we are, our hands are tied by the fact I don't think we've got our own playing field strategy, have we? And the second larger question that relates to that, I'm presuming, and this is the way that I'm thinking at the moment, there's several grounds that we just can confirm we could propose deferring this application.
Okay, thank you.
With the Chair's agreement, I'll answer those two questions. Firstly, in terms of the Sport England position, Sport England have a default position that almost by inference, the redevelopment for any use of a former school site will involve the loss of sports pitches. Okay. However, we need to be clear here that when the middle school site and the high school site in Hexham were merged onto the high school site, the sports provision there was enhanced and improved significantly. And so one would argue logically that the education-related sports pitch requirements had been satisfied at that time, because Sport England didn't object to that scheme. Okay. What's also been done here is that in addition to that provision at the high school, there is also going to be further mitigation in terms of some enhancement to some existing underused sports pitches in Hexham. And the only reassurance I can give members of the committee is that the last school we put through committee also received a Sport England objection, and there was less of an argument for that one than this, and that one went to the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State agreed with our interpretation of it. A lot of this is to do with the mathematical techniques of measuring how much open space there is by Sport England. Okay. We wouldn't have brought this to committee if we thought this was a substantive issue. We are satisfied with it. It's been addressed adequately. And furthermore, just to put a bookend on this, part of the strength of the existing site is that there is significant open space provided on the site, as you'll see from the diagrams. So the combination of off-site mitigation, improvement of existing facilities, the high school site, and what's on site in terms of active opportunities for resident, we feel meets the requirements. Okay. What was the other question?
It was you would be able to propose the variance.
On what? On what basis would we do? I'd ask you, so, for what reason? Okay, yes. Yeah.
They lost the heritage building. There's discussion for Sport England. It does seem to me that this has come a little bit early. It seems like it's sort of it just feels I think there's things to thrash out.
Yeah, we need to put in place, in context, I would suggest the number of objections to the scheme, which was 7. Okay.
I thought that was the plan then.
No, it's the fact that you've positioned this as there being articulated concerns, but all the concerns are addressed in the report.
Thank you. Any more questions, ladies and gentlemen? Caroline.
Just with regards to the bypass condition, is that something that was mentioned by Susan Dancy in the council of the area? Is that something that we can do via the conditions about something around the buyback if it's not developed? Or other thing, I do have concerns around the vehicle access on Wanless Lane. The picture that was displayed up there, if that's going to be one of the main access points, that already looks like quite a bottleneck, and there's parking already in that area. Just with regards to things like the construction traffic. And obviously, I know Julie's not here today, but that construction plan needs to include stuff for the tyres, the wheel washers, and actually that wider impact, because obviously this is going to be a big site. And again, I do feel like there's a detail missing in here for a really stringent decision-making process for this. And I would love to have seen what the housing mix is going to be, that wider housing impact assessment. When you look at where it says there's 136,000 going towards a provision of children and young people on the site itself, what's that going to be? Because actually, is that going to be a really nice play park, or is it going to be used to provide a couple of youth workers? I think the devil's in the detail, and I don't think the detail's in this.
It's okay. Can I just answer?
Yes,
and I think you've answered almost the question which hangs above this one. This is an outline application, and I would say 2 things. Firstly, and this stretches into some of the comments and calls for deferral on the basis of not understanding the impact. Outline applications normally come with very little context. Here, as the case officer described, there's both a master plan, which is conditioned, a design code, and parameter plans and heights and densities, which gives more certainty. There still will be a process, and this takes me on to the next question, which we cannot answer today, is in that there'll be a marketing of the site to identify partners to develop this site, and as part of that land transaction deal, there can be clawbacks and there can be requirements that the site won't be land banked. That is separate though. and we should not get into the issue of land ownership. That's one of the merits. Okay.
Gordon Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. We heard about meeting housing needs and there's no justification for increasing the amount of social housing. Can you just explain, you're querying that, Rob? Have I got that wrong?
Yeah.
Could you just really, could you
Yeah.
just explain how we've
Yeah.
come to the figures there, percentage-wise?
Again, this is an outline scheme, and we can require, through planning, the policy requirement in terms of the affordable housing percentage. However, as part of the, again, we need to be very careful to separate this, but as part of the land transaction and the marketing exercise which is taking place, that is not being done on the basis of just getting the maximum capital receipt for the site. So that clearly would be achievable by just contacting a volume house builder and selling it. So the scheme that is accepted will be the scheme which best delivers quality, the highest possible affordable housing percentage. So what we have said is that this scheme will deliver above the policy requirement for affordable housing. However, we cannot give a figure to that today because that is subject to future land and negotiations. Okay. In the same way that at that point we will look at the precise housing need to actually specify the type, tenure and mix precisely. But that will depend on who comes. If it's, say, a housing association comes forward to develop the site, clearly they could well be looking at a very high percentage, whereas a private developer may be looking at, you know, a mixture. But that will come later. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Jeff Reid.
Thanks, Chair. So, just so I've got this clear, the application is just actually establishing the principle that there can be houses on here, and if we sell it, it will be, if we sold it on, it would be with the benefit of planning permission, and it would be worth more.
Well, it's that at a variance in that is that the council or any landowner can sell land with or without the benefit of planning permission. However, we've already heard some of the aspirations for this site, and it was felt by an outline application being submitted that could have the design code, particularly the master plan work which was done with the local community and all the parameters, that it would go to market with certainty in terms of what the county council's expectations was. And it is a step to reality as well that when you're dealing with Homes England, who help fund affordable housing, as part of their business case work, the first question will be, what is the planning status? So it was felt that having a site with planning permission that set out the expectation would be a more effective way of sourcing public sector money to help with a higher affordable housing portion.
So, Chair, I'm just trying to reassure people, really, that some of the problems or some of the questions that people have raised are for another day, really. This is just to say the county council want houses there, and this is the kind of thing we want, rather than just selling a bit of land and people coming forward with a planning application. What we're saying is, we own this land and this is what we would like to see on it. Who would like to build it, really, aren't we? The other question was, this goes to this, is this detailed enough for the Secretary of State to be able to make a decision, or are they going to have to come back and say, you know, outline plan of permission, you know, before we let you grant permission, we want to see a lot more detail. How do you think it's going to go?
Yeah. This outline is unusually detailed, and particularly things like the preservation of open space on the site will enable the Secretary of State to see the implications of this. Just, can I add on one thing to what you've said for clarity? This isn't an allocated housing site for the reason that when the local plan was submitted, the permission for the high school site had not been granted. So therefore it would have been presumptive to have allocated it for housing when we put the local plan in. However, it was tabled to the planning inspector at the examination that this was a site likely to come forward for housing during the first 5 to 10 years. What this is doing is seeking to offer the certainty that you get normally from an allocation for housing by granting an outline to enable prospective developers to have security to seek funding on it.
Sorry, Chair. I think what I'm saying is, how difficult is it going to be for the Secretary of State to make a decision, and how long do you think that might take?
Well, the last one we did, there was less of a cohesive argument than you see here, and that one came back almost by return of post.
Thank you very much. Any more questions, ladies and gentlemen? Martin.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the Beaumont building, which is going to be demolished, according to the plans, I'm interested to understand a bit more about how we've looked at policy ENV9, and specifically around, because it says that in a conservation area we should take special account of historic buildings, even if they're not listed. We must demonstrate that they're not feasible to bring back into use, and there should be detailed plans for redevelopment of the site before we do so. So I'd just like to explain a little bit more around that aspect of what's happening.
Yeah, and I'll answer this one. And this one comes into the well-made point by the first speakers that normally you do not grant outline permissions or detailed permissions. Well, you don't grant an outline permission where there's a conservation issue. However, in this case, because there is more certainty, because having the master plan work, of having the design code, again, of having the various parameter plans, we can understand much better the likely impact, the range of impacts on the historic assets of the site that is considered acceptable and appropriate to look for, to recommend this for approval. Okay. Yes, the default position is that you always try and retain and reuse buildings wherever possible. However, when this building's been looked at and the overall design of the site, that the site works better in terms of retaining the listed structures, but the non-listed, the non-formally designated heritage buildings, and the one you're mentioning, is going to be demolished. It has been looked at in terms of the potential for repurposing it and retaining it. However, it is a structure which really doesn't naturally lend itself to, say, a residential conversion.
Okay, so it's more design consideration rather than a cost consideration in terms of...
It's come up with a... I think it's worth putting... Can you put the master plan up? And what makes this outline unusual is that there was a public exercise in terms of the master plan before the application was submitted, and this gives you a cohesive design which doesn't just use a blanket approach but uses different densities to give a reasonable number of properties. It doesn't seek to maximise the number of units on the site because of design issues in terms of retaining tree belts, etc. So the cohesive design does require the loss of that building. Okay. But the other building will be the list of building is intended to be converted, say, into flats, but that will come as part of a later application.
Okay, well, my second question is around the listed buildings, so the major one and the minor one. Obviously, it's not part of the application, but I think we've probably all seen situations where listed buildings are very expensive to convert. And the concern is here that we're left with the listed building not converted and the rest of the site built out. I mean, is there anything you can give us in terms of comfort around that?
Yeah. Again, while I'll ask you to place no weight on this issue, is that as part of the conveyancing of the site, the requirement to convert the listed building will be part of that. So in other words, the developer cannot come forward with just a cherry-picking approach to this approach. And in other words, just do the bits which are the most profitable, but we'll need to do the entire site. And that may require a partnership with the developer and an expert in converting listed buildings. But the County Council will be evaluating the tenders to do the work on the basis of a cohesive approach to do with all the elements of the master plan.
So when the rest of the application comes back, that part will be wrapped into the site?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
It may be that there will be a series of applications, though, to do discrete parts of it. Okay.
Any more questions, ladies and gentlemen? Georgina.
Thank you, Chair. Just pick up one point, and it's by really, but we do seem to, I can't remember the last time there was an agreement with our conservation team in the planning report, but one of the speaker from the Civic Society mentioned it's against our policy to consider outline planning applications in conservation areas. I've just had a quick Google around planning guidance. The question is it contrary to our policy and is it contrary to best practice? Because I've just, for example, looked at guidance for applicants from Planning Aid and said local authorities might not allow you to submit outline planning application, for example, in conservation areas where there's lots of important issues where you should really be seeing all the detail, essentially. So would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, and I'll refer you to my earlier answer that the level of detail is for an outline is in that we have a master plan which is going to be conditioned, and there'll be a design guide, and there are the different parameters over density, etc. And that will enable us to, well, that has enabled us to evaluate the impact on those assets. If this had come in as an outline, with just saying an application for residential development without a master plan, etc., there wouldn't have been enough information for us to make the evaluation.
The question is about best practice policy around accepting outline applications for the conservation area. Just that point.
Yes, it's we ask for certainty, and normally if there is no certainty we wouldn't look for it, but here, so there is a master plan already done on this site.
Thank you. Any more questions, members? No more questions? Could I look for a recommendation? Councillor Malcolm Robinson. Thank you. Is that seconded? Councillor Richard Dodd seconds that. Debate. Is there anybody who would like to speak to the proposal? Councillor Richard Dodd.
Thank you, Chair. I do know this site extremely well, which some from further places may not. I used to buy and sell cattle at the mart. The mart moved out. The other mart, the Tynedale mart that was there, is now the hospital. There was a car park opposite the hospital that is now a bus station. So there is development that's going on and on and on. West Cumberland Farmers on the main street used to have its warehouse. It's now blocks of flats. So it's a progression. Now, some bits in Hexham don't move at the right place, or pace, should I say. And, you know, we've seen lots of people in the paper, and obviously there's an election coming. You know, the same ones are shouting, we want this, we want this, we want this. Now it's in front of us. It's not detail, but it is actual a step forward. Because we as the county council have to have a wider accountability to get the best price for this. Remember, there's a school will have been built that will have cost a good few million quid. So we've got to try and claw that back. So we have a duty to get the best price, and the best price will be to put it on the market and see who or what is interested, and then find out the detail of what they're prepared to do. And that's when we sort of get down to the level that people are talking about. There was a strap line that was used half a dozen times by Suzanne. Homes, not houses. I'm going to ask her about that because she can't answer. I've always thought that when you build a house, it's a house, but when the removal man comes with his wagon, it's then turned into a home. You can't have one without the other. So unless that's a strap line for a leaflet. So I support this because it's controversial, but there's only 6 objections, 4 of which are from organisations that are very similar. So that means there's 2 members of the public have objected. So it may be controversial to 2 people or 4 organisations. So I think the town is crying out for things to happen on these sites. And yes, it's a great shame that the stagnation of the old bus site is still there. And if you really want to see stagnation, go and visit this site and have a look at the Argyle Cafe. That's a ropery that's fallen to bits. I don't know if anyone can remember going in there. I can't. Yeah. So, you know, progress will have to be made. Noses might be put out, but we've got to find a solution to get going on this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Jeffreid.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to be a bit more upbeat. This is a good thing, isn't it? And the reason there aren't many objections is because people can see that it's a good use for the site. You know, I just hope that we can get into the Secretary of State, and the way the government are going on about the 1 million homes they're going to build, I mean, you should get a response the day after you've sent it, I would have thought. It will be a valued asset when it's finished, and it'll provide much needed homes. And I think I think everybody probably supported, apart from Councillor Hill, who was as contrary as usual.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the difference between a house and a home, for me, a home is somewhere where you can quite happily live with parks, facilities, and somewhere that you can grow your family as well. And if you turn around and just stick row after row of just boxes, they might be homes. They may not be houses that you want to live in long term. So actually, I think this is a really important definition of what is a house and what is a home. Because where I live now is a home. Where I lived previously, it was somewhere where I stuck my head on at night time till I finally got my home. And I think it is really important that we do build homes, we build communities, rather than just boxes and soulless places where people live. So I think it's really important that we do have homes, we design communities, because if not, if we start taking that away, well, what's the point of having planning committees when just let the developers do what the hell they please? Because actually, I know you care about your community. I know you care what kind of houses are there, and Suzanne does as well. So actually, let's build homes.
Thank you. Georgina.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say it's a shame that certain people are descending into personal comments, and I hope that the seeming to be quite a small number of election candidates that aren't coming forward haven't watched meetings like that and seen typical personal comments made by men against females. And I hope when there's an application in Berwick, I'll tell Richard Dodd, you don't come from Berwick, so you can't comment on it because you live too far away. My position on this is even more so than retrospective applications, I really don't like outline applications by the very definition, because you need to see the detail. And you see, all the detail will come back. It never does. It gets nodded through. Unless it's something very simple, like somebody says, I want to buy this piece of land. In principle, can I have house? Is it okay for housing? Yes. And then come back with all the specific detail and the design. I like the way that some things in support and dismissing the objectors have been used that we would dismiss if it's the other way around. So if an objector says the loss of the value of my house, financial interest for me, so that's not planning consideration. Well, actually, NCC's own financial position isn't a valid planning consideration. If you see somebody's got all the mates and got 200 objections, you say it doesn't matter how many you've got. And these are, you know, including Historic England, the Civic Society, these are the Town Council, significant, and Sports England. These aren't just a couple of NIMBYs down the street, is it? These are 6 substantial people. And my view is this: housing is great, we need more housing, but I can't support this. I'll abstain because we haven't got the detail. And I would have proposed deferring, but I could tell the mood of the room was to just nod it through. I would have proposed deferral, but because I can't vote on this as it is, with just, you know, knocking down conservation buildings, which is part of it. It's not just about building housing. I think we would take a different view if it's some speculative developer that what planning permission outline on this in this way. I don't think it's good practice to have it in a conservation area, so I'll be abstaining.
Thank you. Any more contributions? Councillor Hutchinson.
I don't think people seem to understand. This is outline. It's not detail. We'll get another application for detail later on. This is only outline. So you can't have the detail in the outline.
Thank you. Any more, ladies and gentlemen? Martin?
Thank you. This is contrary to our policy ENV9, as far as I can read it. It's also obviously got difficulties with having to go to a Secretary of State. And I just think this is, for some reason, I don't know what that reason might be, but it seems to have come here a little bit early and it's not worked up enough. I don't see why we can't see more detail and, in fact, a full planning application for this site. What I'm seeing is good in principle, but the demolition of the Beaumont building I don't think is fully justified. And the detail and the assurance that we're going to get what we've got in principle, I'm not convinced of. So I'm going to, I think, well, I can't support it. I think I'll probably abstain on the application.
Thank you. Just a small contribution from the chair before I ask our proposer to round up the debate. It is an outline permission, and as chair, I'm going to support this application. There is a lack of detail, and as good planners, we all like to think that we've checked all the avenues, we've ticked all the boxes. Well, it doesn't happen, does it, with an outline planning? We've got to wait till reserve matters till we get that detail, but that will be coming. I particularly like the extra care provision in the middle of the town, not on the outskirts. And I also like the indicative master plan, which I think shows that a lot of thought and care has got in to how these houses might be built. I also like the fact that, you know, we've ticked the playing fields box. There is sports provision at the high school. We are providing extra monies to enhance existing sports facilities, and it is a very greenfield site. You know, there's lots of open space for recreation. If we pass this permission this evening, it does give us the opportunity to market this site, and we are taking a good step forward and hopefully providing a really good housing development and extra care facility for the good people of Hexham. Malcolm, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I take the point that, you know, that there's not a lot of great detail in it as such. However, it is an outline, and I think I would like to thank officers because of the referral for not putting a lot of detail in time, because that might just stop everything. Now, development itself looks fine. It's not high density. We've left almost as much open space as what there is in the playing fields. So it kind of ticks all the boxes there. The thing that strikes me that we should consider, though, is the only decision we could have made tonight with any degree of certainty was a refusal. And I haven't heard any valid arguments to refuse. Everybody said they want the houses, they might want them slightly different, they might want this to happen or that to happen, but they want the houses. We've got the maximum, we're asking for the maximum affordability, which again ticks another box. So I think all in all, it's obviously a support, and forward it to the Secretary of State to see what they say. And then hopefully we'll get a detailed one back to consider. And that's when we can make the arguments. So that's why I've proposed it.
Thank you very much. As legal officer, are you happy with the recommendation?
I just confirm that's the amended recommendation updated. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, all those that are in favour of this permission?
Nine, Chair.
All those against? All those abstaining?
3, Chair.
That permission,
Does that add up?
Yeah.
Yes.
9. Yeah, 9 and 3. That's 12.
That-
That's everyone.
that permission is approved. Thank you.
Does Councillor Bullen's declaration, is it that she hasn't taken part in any, I know she said she's been involved in the consultation as ward member, just thinking, is it that she hasn't made any views on the
Yeah.
application? Can I just clarify that? Sorry,
Okay.
Chair, I should have done it earlier.
No, no problem. Before we start the second application, can I ask Councillor Ball about your declaration of interest? Were you declaring that you'd taken part in consultation, but you hadn't taken any decisions against or... So you're coming to this
With an open
committee
mind.
tonight with an open mind?
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you. That's fine.
Thank you.
Chair, I would like to take part on this side so I can get some questions
Of course.
as well rather than speaker.
Yes. Excellent.
Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, our second application this evening is the proposed development of a community and youth facility, including performance and event space, training facilities, office space, community services, cafe and associated access, drainage, landscaping and public realm improvements. And this is at 1 Speck Square, Station Road, Ashington. And our Senior Planning Officer, Ryan Salisbury, is going to take us through this application. Ryan, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. There is just one update for members ahead of the committee. There's a slight amendment to the wording of condition 27, which was recommended by our highways team. This shall now read: the proposed development shall be serviced by delivery, servicing and refuse vehicles within the approved service yard only by rigid vehicles, and no articulated vehicles shall seek to service the development from the highway, adjacent Ashington Station car park or approved service yard. So moving on to the presentation, planning permission is sought for the construction of a community and youth facility building on land at 1 Speck Square, Ashington, with associated drainage, landscaping and public realm improvements. The proposal represents the redevelopment of the area following the demolition of existing structures on site. The application site is located within Ashington Town Centre to the south of Station Road. The site is bounded by existing commercial development with the recently opened Ashington train station located to the south with the railway line running along the eastern boundary. This slide shows the existing and proposed site plans for the development. Given the topography of the land, a sloped landscape public realm area will be accommodated towards the northern boundary of the site, with further landscaped areas also created to the south. Vehicle access for deliveries and servicing will also be accommodated by a new access created to the south of the proposed building. The proposed structure would measure 13.25 metres to the highest point, accommodating 3 floors within the build, which will provide various event, training, cafe and office space. The proposed external material palette would consist of aluminium and timber cladding, glazed curtain walling and a single ply membrane roof. This slide shows the proposed floor plans for the development. The publicly accessible floors will be located at ground and first floor level, with training rooms, office space and staff rooms accommodated within the second floor. This slide shows 3D images of the proposed development from the adjacent public footpath facing the main entrance, and then also to the rear from the recently opened train platform. This slide shows an overhead 3D view of the site and the surrounding area. This view shows the proposed landscaping of the site to the northern and southern boundaries. These site photographs show the application site in October 2024, ahead of the demolition of the existing buildings. These photos are taken from the existing footpath just south of the Station Road Highway. These site photos show the site facing east and southwest. The second image provides context and understanding of the wider area. These images are from the rear car park and show the existing building, which is currently being demolished at the time of this committee. The existing railway line and platform are located to the east on these images. These photos show further buildings that are being demolished as part of the site's redevelopment, as well as the large rear car park, which currently serves the railway station and the commercial businesses in Ashington. And this slide shows updated images of the site from a couple of weeks ago. Scaffolding has been erected around the existing buildings, which have previously been approved for demolition, with these works currently ongoing. The application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions set out within the officer report and the amended wording to condition 27 as noted before the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Ryan. We now move to our public speaking slot. We've got 2 gentlemen objecting to the application, Andrew Carmichael and Andy McGregor. And then we have Richard Morgan speaking in support of the application. Could I invite Andrew Carmichael and Andy McGregor to give their speeches? Gentlemen.
Andrew McGregor. I made comments on the planning portal because I'm critical of some aspects of this proposal. Whilst appreciating that it's almost certain to be approved, there are some suboptimal aspects of it. Apparently members of the public have been speaking, have to speak either as supporters or objectors, hence I've been classed as an objector. I consider myself more to be a critical friend of the scheme, suggesting how it could be improved. The main theme of my comments is that the scheme, like so many other developments in the town, is too narrowly defined with too little joined up thinking or the whole town view of the developments. The development site, as you've seen on the photographs, actually excludes some of the buildings that were shown on the photographs, the current cafe, a pizza place and the former Midland Bank building, and at the other end the post office, a sale room and station villa. I do not believe that this really allows the best use to be made of this key town centre site. It's going to result in a rather messy mix of old and new. The structure of the bridge over the railway is also old, and should Network Rail at some time or the Highways Authority realise that that might need work doing, that should be considered now. I understand the difficulties about the ownership of the sites to extend it and the risk of mission creep, but if a more ambitious scheme, I believe more consideration should be given to achieving the very best option for the town centre, rather than as a scheme that in a few years' time may be questioned as, why didn't they, or why did they do that? demolition of the existing Wandsbeck Squares commenced. Government funding for the project has apparently been secured on the basis of the present proposals, so it's probably too late to make any great changes to the scheme. The loss of the road that goes under the present building will complicate traffic flow, and seems to be no joined up thinking about how vehicles can best exit and enter the newly enlarged station car park. Using more land would allow vehicles to better connect with the station road. Also, better links with pedestrian and cycleways, and to ensure a local feeder bus service to coordinate with the trains. I accept the need to improve the gateway to Ashington Town Centre, but I'm not convinced this is the best way to achieve it. And for the community and youth facilities, could they not repurpose certain other buildings in the town centre?
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Andy McGregor, you've got 2.5 minutes, sir. Over to you.
Yeah, well, I'm objecting on due to the fact that I think this scheme has shown a total disregard for the well-established return route for vehicles back on the Station Road. I've used that route beneath Wilkinson Car Park, where you come out of by the post office and rejoin at a traffic light junction back on the Station Road for a good 40 years. And this application has only been out, half of the time it's been out. The new railway station wasn't actually in use thereabouts. So it's just now that people are really finding out there's a real issue with trying to exit the railway station back onto Station Road for all those who come in from the north off Station Road, bearing in mind Ashington being the most northernmost station at the minute. A lot more people are coming in from the north than from the south. So I think because this planning application has chosen to close off the access route back on the Station Road permanently, because it's chosen to do that, it should therefore be 100% responsible for supplying and making a return route back onto the Station Road as part of the planning application. Because it's at the moment it's shown a total disregard for local traffic, all the new rail users. I mean, there's a wonderful new 270 space car park there now. So you've got to go on a magical mystery tour when you come out that car park, back round Kenworth Road, heading south, then try and loop back about 4 or 5 times the distance you do, because at the moment, the old return was basically 1 minute and about 250 metres. And the part of the application should be to include the equivalent return route. And I think that's got to be done by widening Kenworth Road back onto Station Road to a full two-way traffic. And that just involves about 100 metres. And put a nice wide footpath come cycleway down each side of the two-way road. And that also lets you have buses turn off Station Road into the station car park, pull up in a new bus stop, basically at the south end of where you're proposing a new building, and also coaches, so they could return back on the Station Road easily.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for your contribution. Thank you. Richard Morgan. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. My name's Richard Morgan. I'm a director at IC Planning, and we are the planning consultants for this project, working on behalf of Northumberland County Council. This application represents a significant milestone for this important project, following extensive community consultation over a number of years, and forms part of a series of projects in the Ashington Regeneration Programme. In line with the funding requirements, the proposal will deliver a sustainable and adaptable community and youth facility that will bring footfall to the town centre and create a welcoming and inspiring gateway into Ashington for those arriving via the new train station. The building has intentionally been designed with flexibility to support a range of uses for creativity, learning and social interaction for the local community, and particularly young people, fulfilling the goals the Ashington Investment Plan has established. The proposals also include significant improvements to the public spaces around the building and linking Station Road with the new train station through the introduction of a new landscaped and accessible and inviting walking route and seating areas. When the proposals were presented at pre-application consultation events held at the YMCA in May last year, they were very well received and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. There is currently a significant level difference between the site and Station Road, which creates a disconnect between the new train station and the town centre. The site has lacked any natural surveillance and the Undercroft parking area has been a hotspot for antisocial behaviour. The proposals have sought to address this by creating a wide graded walkway accessible to all users, linking the station with the primary shopping area of Station Road, and where the open environment creates a safe atmosphere and people are encouraged to stop and enjoy the space. This will close off the Undercroft Road through the site, with the only vehicle access being the servicing for the new building. To achieve the objectives of creating a safe and welcoming environment and increasing footfall in the town centre, pedestrians have to be prioritised. Bringing traffic through this area would significantly undermine these objectives, and there is an alternative route available. It is also important to note that the traffic modelling that was done for the new train station car park did not take account of the Undercroft route and considered all traffic would head south on Kenilworth Road. The proposed access arrangements have been assessed by the Council's Highway Department and deemed acceptable. The proposed development will be transformational for this part of Ashington, complementing other regeneration proposals in the town centre which are ongoing. The proposals have been demonstrated to be policy compliant, and we welcome the case officer's recommendation to approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Members of the committee, have you any questions you'd like to put to our planning officers? Ian Hutchinson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to be the first to admit I don't really know Ashington that well. I've been there before a few times, but I don't know it. Regarding the second speaker that spoke, speaking about the station, or the newly opened station, when this application came in, the station wouldn't be open. Since then it has opened, and it's turned out to be a great success. Did you take into account anything like the success it may be, and potentially cause any traffic problems, or traffic safety problems, or pedestrian?
Yeah, when the applications came in for the stations, a full assessment was made for the enlarged car park, and it was deemed to be acceptable for the town centre and the rail station. So yeah, an assessment was made at that time, and it was that all traffic would go south, knowing that it couldn't go out to the north, bearing in mind that the route to the north isn't actually public highway back out. So we took the worst case scenario of all the traffic going to the south.
So this, if I can come back, Chair, so the assessment was made with the provision of the future of the station?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I do have a few questions with regards to this transformational project. Number one, how it's transformational for Ashton, I will beg belief, because obviously I have been critical and I was wanting the wow factor and everything else, but we'll get into that later in debate. I do worry the lack of operator, because I do believe that the internal layout may potentially change once that operator is announced, whenever that does happen. There was mention of that being also including entertainment and space use outside. I'm just wondering within that, if that is indeed the case, when you mention on 7.27, due to the town centre location of the development, there is no residential properties in immediate vicinity. When you actually stand at the front of the building where it will be, directly opposite you have flats. To the side you have Ashbourne, Oakland, Langwell, Kilnworth Road. These are all, the last time I checked, they're definitely housing. So they will be impacted. So how can we say on 7.27 that there's no residential properties in the immediate proximity. And this is before you take into account across the road on John Street, who are already having impact from the train station and the car park with headlights shining into their house from the other side, which even though it's the other side of the train line is having an impact. So we're saying there's no housing, there definitely 100% is. Again, like the speakers previously, the fact that we're going to have 2 entry points into this area and 1 exit point, which includes all the deliveries that will service this area, which are either going to end up, whether they're delivering and then they have to go back down Kenilworth Road. It is a very busy area anyway for on-street parking, so I want to know the impact assessment, and also if everybody's heading from the train station back out, how, when you've got a school in that area as well, they're going to have to be pushed down, because I want to know that detail of the impact assessment, because if I'm shopping in the town centre, which is part of this, we're meant to be encouraging that. If you buy anything in the town centre, you're going to have to drive halfway around the town to go and pick it up if it's heavy or anything like that. So I think the devil's in the detail with this application, and I think that we are losing parking spaces under Wansbeck Square. Yes, was it the best area? Not by a long shot, but I do think that the impact of losing that through road is definitely an issue. And as I say, if you can answer some of them questions for us, because I do worry about the lack of parking. The car park's already full with the train station. So where is this transformational project, and we're saying that we want people to walk and cycle there or come on the train, but actually there will be people that drive to Ashington as well. If the car park's already full, where they're going to park, and then it's going to have an impact on them people that we're saying don't exist in Ashbourne, Oakland, Langwell, Kenilworth Road. So yeah, can you answer them questions, please?
Ryan.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I can take sort of the amenity aspect of that. We did consult with our environmental protection team on this application. They raised no objection. There was a noise assessment submitted as part of the application documents which considered the future use in terms of sort of the internal activity and the external activity. Environmental protection were satisfied that that noise assessment appropriately considered the impacts upon the neighbouring commercial buildings, and that there was sufficient separation caused by the Station Road public highway and the railway line in terms of the residential properties. So yeah, environmental protection was satisfied that there wouldn't be any immediate impact. In terms of sort of outdoor activity as well, any future events, they would be covered by a temporary events licence as well by our licensing team, and they, as part of that licensing grant, they would assess sort of the impacts on amenity as part of that as well. So there are sort of separate regulations that would cover the external activity. So yeah, in terms of the amenity aspect, sort of we're satisfied that that was appropriately assessed. In terms of the highways aspect, Michael?
Yeah, in terms of the highways aspect, we did have concerns about the types of vehicles that would be coming to and from for delivery and servicing, hence the amended condition that Ryan referred to before. Servicing strategy, I'm just having to look, I believe there might have been a servicing and strategy condition as well on there. We've also got the construction management plan on there for during the construction period, and when we get into that bit, we will ensure that the timings avoid school pickups and drop-offs, so we can manage that through the construction management plan. And it was assessed on whether the roads coming out of the Kenilworth Road coming south was considered acceptable for the types of vehicles we're using it here.
Well, I'll look for...
With regards to the parking spaces, it was classed as town centre development, so therefore it was a lesser parking standards, but we had the car parking areas adjacent to the south and on the other side of the railway line.
Can we make sure that there's a named contact, please, for the residents on Kenilworth Road and the surrounding area, because there will be issues during the build phase and afterwards.
Yes, we
Thank
can.
you.
That's something we're going to progress, yeah.
Thank you. Any more questions, ladies and gentlemen? Councillor Watson.
Can I just clarify, because I travelled on the train yesterday, which was great, from Newton to Ashington on the first train from Blythe. So when you get to the station, I think the speaker that was but before mentioned, you've obviously got the bridge going across. You're going to produce something transformational, in the words of NCC, but you're going to have a bridge that just looks like it's dilapidated and it's fallen down and it really needs a coat of paint. Is that not included in this application? Am I right in thinking that?
It might be easier if I can show the plan on here. So, partly difficult to see sort of on there, but sort of the image on the right hand side with the colour attached, that shows sort of the proposed site plan for the site. So the existing station platforms to the southern boundary of that, at the moment there's an existing walkway that sort of follows, as you can see by that grey layer, that would follow up north along there, and then the existing bridge, or sort of Wansbeck Square area, is towards the top right corner. So I mean, the majority of that actually falls out with the boundary of this sort of planning application, so it's not a consideration as part of this application. But yeah, in terms of sort of the improvements to the landscaped area of Wansbeck Square, the north and south, yeah, that's ultimately being improved as part of this scheme.
But the bridge isn't being painted. Any more comments, ladies and gentlemen? Could I have a proposal, please? Caroline. Floor's yours.
I propose that we accept the officer's recommendations with the amended conditions also put in there as well.
Thank you. Is that seconded, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you. Anyone like to speak to the proposal? Caroline. And then Malcolm. Oh, you can't. You can't. No, we'll wait for yours at the end. Malcolm.
Thank you, Chair. You know, I don't like this one, and I'll tell you why. First of all, I agree with the speaker in the traffic. The traffic coming out, the train station car park, hasn't been thought through. Not only has it all got to go south, it's going through a housing estate, basically. And you just get out there, as I did last week, 2 weeks ago, and you immediately hit with a give way and chicanes. And it's a housing estate you're driving through. And there's 270 car parking places. And you want to make this transformational and bring people into it? No. So I agree with traffic is a problem. My main disagreement, though, and, you know, I've got to say, we don't know who the management's going to be. Every time I've tried to get something for Bedlington, that's what kills it, the management. And yet here we see quite a large development, and we don't even have a management sorted for it. So that's clear discrimination as far as I can see. But never mind, you know where I'm coming from. The main point is the aesthetics of it. When we did the Blythe one, the Blythe Town Centre, I said, that's like a Victorian workhouse. Well, this one's going to be looking like a bunch of Lego blocks. And I think that's laziness. We can do better. We can have something a bit more ambitious than those boxes. That'll be my main concern. It's just not ambitious enough. It's, you know, we've dropped the ball. If we're going to do it properly. And don't do it on the cheap. Simple as that.
Can I come in on that point?
Yes.
I think it's a concern, what you just made, Councillor Robinson. However, remember, we need to look at what is in front of us. Because for every scheme you consider, there are multiple different ways that you could deliver it. Okay, you could spend more on it, you could spend less on it, you could have a different design. However, we have to look at the acceptability of what is in front of us, not as a comparison to a what-ifism. Okay, so if you say that the design is poor, you need to articulate the reasons why the design is poor, and then that you can suggest as a reason for refusal. However, you have to substantiate that in terms of design grounds. with what's in front of you rather than looking at what else you could do. Because, just to restate it, there are always a range of other things you could do on any site. And if you think the design is poor, suggest that. However, you can't say, it isn't material to say, well, you could do something different. Okay.
Chair, can I reply to that? Because for me, if I did suggest other designs, that is flying into fantasy, into the realms of fantasy. The fact is, I don't like this one, and this one is what's in front of us. That's what I'm saying, that's all I'm saying.
Ryan, can I just ask you to comment? Obviously, you know, we've read the report, there's wood cladding, there's aluminium, so obviously, you know, it's a different scheme, some thought's gone into it. It's not a brick build. Glass as well, large glazed areas. Do you feel that our design team have done their bit in putting this together?
Yes, I do. I mean, this has evolved since pre-application stage. There was a pre-application submitted to us, and as part of that pre-application stage, we did sort of raise design consideration. So the scheme has been amended since the initial pre-application stage. There's been a sort of a detailed design document submitted sort of with this scheme, and sort of it outlines where sort of design considerations have came from, where the design cues have came from. I accept it is sort of an unusual sort of design, but the applicant has set out that it is sort of focused on modern design principles, like you say, a modern external material palette in terms of timber cladding, lots of glazing. We've even sort of put a condition on there that would sort of seek for sustainable construction sort of during the development phase to sort of accord with our policies. So yeah, we're satisfied that sort of through the various pre-application and application discussions that the design has evolved to sort of a satisfactory element that we're happy that it accords with sort of local and national planning policy.
So thought has gone into it, Councillor Robinson. But it's obviously not to your tastes. Not at all. Okay. Councillor Jeff Reid.
Well, I've listened to what was said, and I listened very carefully to Councillor Ball, and I've come to the conclusion, whatever my reservations were, I'm prepared to second Councillor Ball, because she's the one that's going to have to live with it every day, not me. So if it's acceptable to her, then it's acceptable to me. And certainly, if you think about what was there before, this is an absolute massive improvement. You know, it's going to be modern, and it's next to the line, and it's, you know, have a lot of through traffic. But I absolutely get what Councillor Robinson's saying. These are just, you know, how sustainable is it in the long term if you can't get a management in there that can be as fleet of foot as it needs to be to keep this space vibrant. But as I say, if it's good enough for Councillor Ball, it's good enough for me.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Hutchinson.
I'm a bit like Malcolm. I'm really very, very finely balanced. I'm concerned about the highways, the traffic going through the housing estate, residential estate. Highway say it's all right, planning says it's all right, but I just have that niggling concern.
Can we? Yeah, sorry, Chair.
The Director of Planning's coming in.
Yeah. Can I just ask members just to be clear in their minds that some of the comments have related to the busy operation of the train station car park and the routing of vehicles there. We are not here to discuss how busy the station car park is. We're here to just look at this scheme in isolation. And yeah, it's both a welcome and a problem that the station car park is busy and the train service is being well used. But that is not what we are here today to decide. Okay.
But it's the excuse me, it's the actual routing of the vehicles, and you know, 2 ways in, 1 way out. That's my concern. So I'll listen to everybody else and make an informed decision at the end.
Is it possible to have a comment from Highways on that?
Yeah, with regards to the car park, that was already sort of committed development, and it was already catered for without going out to the north. So all those vehicle trip movements in that car park have already been accounted for as to go through to the south. So that's already going to happen anyway. The servicing is the issue that we had concerns with, because the servicing, whilst they can come in from the north down Kenilworth Road and then turn in, go in, they will have to go back out south of Kenilworth, because there's not the width to go back north through Kenilworth Road. That's what was presented to with the scheme was as that.
As I said before, I don't know the site. I don't often go to Washington, but it's just a concern I had.
Okay. Anybody else speak to the proposal before I invite Councillor Ball to round up the debate? Falls to you.
Thank you, Chair. So, I would like to move this, because whatever was put in this site within the town centre, we will be discussing these issues, because basically without the post office and the other buildings that have been mentioned, the access problem will be there. So no matter what was to be put here, we will be discussing this very same thing. Anybody that has visited Ashington, highly recommend it. Come, spend your money there. We've got some fantastic things there already. We've got the parks, we've got the QE2 Park, Riverside Park. We've got some great businesses within the town centre. So come along and see them and enjoy Ashington. And do you know, when you just turn around and go, what is there currently is an absolute eyesore, and it has been since I was young. And this is an opportunity, and I think there is a number of issues, but no matter what is built there, there will be issues. I don't know who the operator will be, but I really hope that they have ambitious plans as well for the site. And really, I keep on saying it, but make Ashington mint again, because I think this is a great opportunity. This is the welcome investment in the town centre. It will support youth activities, which we keep on talking about, the best start to life and youth services. And this is key to this development. The fact that it's going to be a community space, the fact that it's next door to the train station. Do I think it's everything that it's been promised? Do I think it's going to bring the wow factor and people from all around? No. But do I think that it's better than what we've already got by night and day? So I do support this, but please make sure that the residents are put first during the construction phase. Work with whoever the county councillor is beyond me. I hope it is me, because I will be in Highways on a daily basis, I have no doubt, on the back of some of the issues that will be raised on this. But I really think this will be an asset to the town. I look forward to meeting the operator. I look forward to the plans, but also I want to see them conditions tied up in a neat bow with regards to the construction traffic and the long-term, the traffic management and sustainability, because I do not want residents on all these areas that I mentioned earlier to be affected by deliveries late in the night, bottles being emptied from the bar facility. So all these things need to be taken into consideration, and work with the residents and put the residents first. Thank you.
Well done. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, all those in favour of this application?
11, Chair.
11. Anybody against? One against. That application is passed. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, our last application this evening is on page 107, and it relates to the erection of 100 dwellings, demolition of existing buildings, associated infrastructure on land surrounding Spittlehouse Farm, North Seaton Road, Newbiggin by the Sea. And our senior planning officer who's going to put that forward is Ryan Salisbury. Ryan, over to you, sir.
Thank you again, Chair. There's a few updates for members ahead of this, so I'll read those out. One further objection was received against the application from a resident following publication of the committee report. It's just a couple of paragraphs, so I'll read it as follows. The land that the applicant proposes to build on is prone to flooding due to mine workings in the area, as the underground pumps were turned off after the last mine in the area closed the disused road that the A189 Spine Road was built alongside, and housing was built along this road. I, for one, would never buy a property that was built on flooded land or land prone to flooding. There's no infrastructure for the extra traffic in this area that would be created by this build. What is happening with the old Colliery School site that was demolished for housing by Arch years ago? Why not build on there? Or the old colliery workings behind the former Colliery School site? There's a slight rewording to condition 9 within the officer report following further comments from the local authority's ecologist. This now reads, works on site will be undertaken in accordance with the barn owl mitigation measures included in the report, Spittal House Farm, New Biggin by the Sea, assessment 1.3, including the demolition of building 7 will not be permitted from March to December, inclusive unless a suitably qualified ecologist has first confirmed that no nesting birds are present. A pre-construction nest check of building 7 will be carried prior to demolition. The check will take place no more than 48 hours before the commencement of works. And if a barn owl nest is identified, consultation with the ECOW will be required to determine next steps, which will be agreed with the LPA in writing prior to the commencement of works to this building. And finally, there's also been a slight rewording to condition 14, which was recommended by our environmental protection team to reflect the additional ground gas information that was provided by the applicant. So the amended wording would read, no building shall be brought into use or occupied until the applicant has submitted a verification report to the methodology detailed in the Ground Gas Protection Verification Plan by Sirius Geotechnical Limited, December 2023. The verification report shall be approved in writing by the LPA. And finally, just in terms of the recommendation of in the report, this shall include the provision of 10 affordable homes, which are to be secured as part of a Section 106 agreement. That is detailed within the appraisal, it just wasn't included within the recommendation. So moving on to the presentation, planning permission is sought for the demolition of existing agricultural structures and the construction of 100 dwellings with associated infrastructure on land at Spittal House Farm, New Biggin by the Sea. The site is located towards the southern boundary of New Biggin and is bounded by residential properties to the north, agricultural land to the south and west, and the B1334 public highway to the east. The site is located 0.5 miles from the nearest retail facility and approximately 0.8 miles from the town centre. The application proposes the construction of 100 residential dwellings across the site, including pockets of open space and an internal highway. Access to the site is to be achieved via an existing access of the B1334, which will require upgrading to facilitate the proposed use. This slide shows example images of some of the proposed house types on site. All properties will be 2-storey and would benefit from front and rear gardens. External materials will consist of red brickwork with concrete roof tiles and white UPV fenestration. A condition is recommended that would secure samples of these prior to the construction of any dwelling on site. This slide shows the proposed landscaping and open space arrangements on site. Existing landscaping along the southern boundary of the site is to be retained and strengthened. Some trees within the curtilage of the site are to be removed to facilitate the development. However, the tree survey recognises that these are of poor quality and provide minimal amenity or ecological value. Furthermore, they're not protected by a tree preservation order. These site photographs show the application site from the adjacent public footpath. The existing agricultural structures are visible, which are to be demolished as part of the application proposals. These images show the site from the existing access. which is to be upgraded as part of the application. The second image shows a view from within the site with the existing properties upon Spittal Road visible in the distance. And these photographs provide additional views from within the site facing north and west. These are the existing agricultural structures on site that are no longer in use. The majority of the structures are in significant state of disrepair, as can be seen from the images on the slide. And this slide sets out the Section 106 contributions that are to be secured as part of the application proposals. These figures are also set out within the officer report. So the application is recommended for approval, subject to the officer report and the amendments to the conditions and recommendation as read out ahead of the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ryan. Now come to public speaking, ladies and gentlemen. 2 speakers. We've got Daniel Ball speaking against the application and Chris Dodds speaking in support. Would Daniel Ball like to come and sit in our speaker's seat? You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much. Of the now 38 public comments submitted, all 38 of them have been objections with, I feel many of the concerns that have been highlighted with them haven't been entirely addressed by all of the comments in the supporting documents that have been provided. For ecology, the development will still affect the larger fauna such as deer that are known to frequent the adjacent field and approach up to the hedgerow bordering the site. While the implementation of bird and bat boxes cover the present, there is no guarantee that the wildlife displaced during the construction will return on its completion. Many of the comments fail to raise the danger of the B1334 and the congestion leading to the North Seaton roundabout. The T-junction at the mouth of the development is currently a known issue. The visibility displays for pedestrian safety proposed on the inside of the development do not seem to be mirrored on the exterior. If this level of safety is required within the development, how is its absence suitable for the exterior? Especially on a well-used pedestrian and cycle commuter corridor. Comparing this junction to the Spittal Road junction, there is far less space and far more restrictive sightlines, even with minimal work proposed on this junction. It will not be of equivalent to the Spittal Road junction, which itself is supported by the adjacent traffic lights and crossing, which help to slow down passing cars. By the data presented in the NIH report, the New Biggin falls within the top 10 to 20% of most deprived areas, yet there is only 10% affordable housing provision. Further to that, there is no evidence to suggest that these houses will fall in line with the affordability ratio set out. Is enough being done, and how can it be guaranteed that these houses will go to local residents and not into the hands of absentee landlords, buy-to-let or holiday homes? The report also shows that low attainment in school pupils, with the source data showing far below Northumberland average scores in reported children outcomes, aside from early years. While there are children's spaces available within local secondary schools, it is clear from the supply data alongside the Ofsted reports that the needs of the children are not currently being met within secondary education. The report highlights an estimated increase in primary and secondary school age children in the site. However, this estimate is based on the current demographics for the area, which, as noted in the same report, have a high instance of over 65s, or those who will fall into this category within the next 10 years, not groups which typically have school-aged children. This, alongside the predominantly below wider Northumberland outcomes for health, suggests the negligible impact the report recommends may not be entirely accurate. The existing homes on the Spittal Road have been redeveloped over the years to take advantage of the natural beauty of the area, and with many installing larger windows and French doors in the rear of their properties overlooking the field. With the new development, the proximity of the new buildings will provide those buildings direct views into the depths of the existing houses, destroying the privacy and potentially the mental health of many of the current residents. The new development will also significantly impact neighbourhoods throughout New Biggin, throughout building, in the noise, light and privacy, plus concerns about how the extensive groundwork required to account for the wet ground conditions will affect the structural stability of the surrounding houses. The difference in the public response between the developments on the north and the south of the Spittal Farm should be indicative of general sentiment. The southern development will have far less impact on nearby residents, limiting traffic and building disruption based on its size and location.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your contribution.
Thank you.
Can I now invite Chris Dodds to speak in support of the application?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Chris Dodds. I'm Land Director at Gleeson Homes. Gleeson specialise in the provision of entry-level housing aimed at low to middle earners, giving customers who are often young or first-time buyers a chance to afford to buy their own home. We are currently developing around 80 sites across the North East, and the proposal before you for the development of 100 units is 100 such homes. We take special care in determining our sales prices to ensure they are affordable to as many local people as possible, and we do ensure that all developments provide homes which can be afforded by a couple working full-time on the national minimum wage. On this basis, we anticipate a two-bedroom property on this scheme bought with a typical 35-year mortgage, which will be 2-year fixed with a 10%, to be significantly cheaper than private rent and often more cost-effective than renting even a local authority home. Gleeson houses also provide significant cost savings to residents through their energy bills, something which is particularly relevant in these times. The average Gleeson home uses 49% less energy than older housing stock, making for an average household saving around £1,300 a year for our purchases. This development will deliver considerable Section 106 contributions, totalling around £413,000, covering matters including healthcare, education, coastal mitigation, open space and highway improvements. The development also provides 10% affordable housing, equating to 10 units for affordable home ownership, sold at a discount from market value. Gleeson would also roll out our Community Matters initiative on the scheme. Through this, Gleeson provide and commit to a number of initiatives in order to embed ourselves within local communities, which includes matters such as local junior sports sponsorship, local employment commitments, commitment to apprenticeships and sustainability pledges. This is obviously all in addition to the contributions secured via a Section 106 agreement. It's our hope that this predominantly first-time buyer-led scheme on a sustainable site, bringing forward a significant package of Section 106 contributions, is supported by members, and would like to thank officers for taking this application forward in a professional and diligent manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Members of the committee, have you any questions you'd like to put to our planning officers? Councillor Watts.
I see on New Biggin Town Council they've mentioned about previous suggestions of lower numbers of homes, so can we have some clarity on the amount of homes that's on this site? Because I think it was 50 something in a previous application or a previous conversation. And also on the surface water element, we have had problems with Gleeson with surface water, and I see it's in a condition, but I always worry about conditions and what actually does then happen when the homes are constructed. So I think condition 5, if you can just give me some confirmation and some reassurance on that, please. Ryan, thank you.
Yes, no problem. Yeah, in terms of the comments from New Biggin Town Council, they refer to the housing land allocations, which were included within the previous Wansbeck District Local Plan and which was transferred across to the Northumberland Local Plan. So the Wansbeck District Local Plan allocated this site for housing and gave an estimate of around 57 dwellings that could be accommodated on this site. The Northumberland Local Plan undertook its own sort of assessment of that and accommodated that approximately 85 dwellings could be accommodated on the site. These assessments are just sort of generic initial sort of considerations as to how many can be accommodated on the site. It doesn't undertake sort of a detailed review of the site and the surrounding circumstances. It basically looks at sort of the square meterage of the site and then how many dwellings could be accommodated in that in terms of sort of sufficient open space and outdoor amenity provision and sort of protection of amenity and things like that. So whilst those numbers sort of provide a general overview, it isn't sort of a restriction of sort of how many dwellings can be accommodated on the site. This application did benefit from pre-application inquiry, where we provided a response and said that we thought 100 homes was sufficient on the land. All properties would benefit from front and rear gardens and would benefit from sufficient separation distances between the plots. And that also is the case with the existing properties on Spittal Farm to the north. So yeah, we're satisfied that whilst 100 dwellings is slightly over the 85 dwellings that was identified within the housing land allocation, we're satisfied that it is sort of a higher density area and that it wouldn't be to the detriment of sort of future residents or existing residents to the north. In terms of the second point, in terms of drainage, yeah, there's been sort of detailed discussions between the applicant and sort of our lead local flood authority team on this. There's been sort of 3 separate sort of consultations on that to sort of ensure that sort of drainage was addressed. Through the submission of additional information, our LLFA team are satisfied that subject to planning conditions that can be appropriately protected. During the construction stage, drainage information would need to be provided prior to any commencement of development, so they won't be able to commence on development on site until they've provided that drainage to us. And then they will also need to provide a verification report prior to any occupation of the dwelling to ensure that all the SUDs and the drainage has been implemented as approved. So as a local planning authority, we're satisfied that we've got sort of sufficient control over the drainage on site through the recommended conditions.
Can I just come back on that? So I guess, again, the open space seems to be a condition as well. I guess with 100 dwellings, that means the open space is more restricted. So, but you're confident with the 100 dwellings that you'll still get sufficient open space to make these homes and not just houses?
Yes, that's right. We've undertaken sort of our own open space assessment of this, and sort of the local plan sets out how much open space should be achieved. This actually sort of meets the open space provision on site through landscaped areas. So we're satisfied that the open space provision will be met on site, and then Section 106 can secure off-site contributions for open space in terms of parks and gardens. So yeah, all open spaces to be accommodated on site in line with our local plan.
Caroline?
Thank you, Chair. So I do have some highway questions. North Seaton Roundabout is already, without another 100 houses there, a major problem. If you are coming out of New Biggin via that route, you are sat on that roundabout and you are taking life and limb into your hands every time you try to pull out of there. We obviously, on that roundabout, we also have the new businesses that have opened up, again adding extra onto that roundabout. So I'm wondering if, as part of the highways assessment, if any of this has been included in some kind of guarantee, because New Biggin has changed vastly in the past decade, and another 100 houses is going to be a minimum of another 100 cars. And as much as we are battering walking and cycling strategies, actually, when it's raining in New Biggin, you can plan for a lot of things, but the weather is one thing that you can't guarantee on the North Sea. So people, I know. So when it comes to dropping kids off at school, they are going to be on that road. Either that or we're going to force people through Woodhorn. So I want some guarantees on that road being suitable, the speed limits being adhered to, and that actually we're going to have some teeth with enforcement, because if not, the people that are already existing residents are going to have massive problems. Is there any way that we can put some kind of condition on these homes not being second homes, not being holiday homes, and actually be for the people of New Biggin or is the surrounding areas? Because actually people, the gentrification of areas like Newbiggin is forcing local people out, and we've seen it up and down the coast. So if we could put a condition on, I would like to see that. Yeah, and the other thing that I would like to see as well, where it says about the building materials, so on page 142, building materials or equipment shall not be stored. Other sites around this area are causing a massive headache with materials being blown across the roads because they're not being stored correctly. So not just about being not stored on the highway, actually some kind of like condition around how they make sure that bits of polystyrene aren't blown across the roads into the fields, because once it actually is off that site, it becomes our problem or the landowner's problem. So I would like to see that. And also flooding. These fields, when you drive from North Seaton through Ashington, you can see where the whole of this area, these fields, they end up flooding. If these are new first-time buyers that are then hit because, unfortunately, some of the wording of some of the stuff, they may not realise that they could potentially be on a floodplain and have some issues at a later date. So I'm just wanting some guarantees around the flooding for future residents on this site. Thank you.
Can I ask that's one question to begin with? I'll bring you right in for some of the other ones there. There is a local plan requirement where if the proportion of what we call non-primary residents, that's either second homes or holiday lets, is above a certain threshold, then we do impose restrictions. That we got through the public inquiry on the local plan, and we had to provide evidence, and the policy that's been adopted is 20%. In other words, if 20% or more of properties are already second homes or holiday lets, then we put restriction on. That is not the case in Newbiggin at the moment. What Newbiggin could do, and same as other settlements, is, because that's calculated at the parish or town council level, if they felt there was hot spots where they wanted to impose restrictions because it was higher in some parts of the town, then that's something a neighbourhood plan can do. But at the moment we cannot put this on this site because it doesn't meet the policy test for putting the restriction on.
Yes, regarding the highways and the roundabout, all developments that are going to have an impact on that roundabout, we are seeking contributions, which is what in the description of the application, it refers to the highway improvement works. It's a contribution for all housing and commercial developments that will have an impact on that roundabout to make improvements to that roundabout.
So is that a personal guarantee that the residents of Newbiggin are not going to be vastly impacted by what is already a problem roundabout? Because I can't see, no matter what the contribution is, unless there's another road put into Newbiggin, that is going to be clattered at least first thing in the morning and last thing at night. And I just think it's going to, and that's before you take into account that it is a tourist hotspot and people want to go to Newbiggin because it's part of our beautiful coastline. So I think if we don't do something and put some conditions in place now, actually it's going to be a headache for you in the future. But we've already seen numerous accidents. We've already seen the highways, if there's a broken down vehicle, you're done for. So you're not getting on work on time. So if we don't do something at the planning stage, we might as well, you can ask for the moon on a stick. It's not going to make any difference when you're late for work.
Yeah, as I say, all the developments that are going around that impact on the road, we are now seeking contributions, and we have done in the past and previous developments, and all that money will go into the pot to help improve the roundabout.
I think just, yeah, in terms of the flooding aspect, yeah, that was something that was considered by sort of our lead local flood authority team, and Northumbrian Water were consulted on the application as well. And I think through sort of the submission of an amended drainage strategy and flood risk assessment, LLFA were satisfied that the site will be sort of made safe from flooding and that it won't impact sort of other land elsewhere. So we're satisfied that the conditions recommended by the LLFA team sort of are robust and sort of will prevent any sort of future flooding or on the site or on adjacent land.
Thank you. Yes, I've got Councillor Hill on my list. Georgina.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick bit of clarification, please. On the comments, the campaign, I think there's a missing R, campaign to protect rural England. I think that's meant to be rural, not rural, as in rural Britannia, rural England. I just want, they have set out their objections regarding the heritage benefits of the barn buildings. We do seem to be, we often dismiss these kind of concerns, these buildings, heritage value in development areas, maybe a bit demolition happy, I don't know, I think we may be a bit too quick to dismiss the heritage aspects and arguments, but I just wanted to clarify why you've obviously dismissed in your sort of case, if you like, why you've dismissed what they've had to say.
Can I add to that as well? Because I asked about the stone. I wanted to try and get it incorporated in the development somehow, but I don't think that's been done.
Yeah, so I can address that. In terms of the existing agricultural structures on site, they aren't actually listed buildings, but they are identified by our heritage team as non-designated heritage assets. So they do sort of have a level of protection within sort of the local plan and sort of national planning policy, but we need to assess sort of any impact and any sort of public benefits that would arise from the scheme. I think, as could be seen from sort of the site photographs, a lot of the buildings on site are in a significant state of disrepair, and this matter sort of was raised with the applicant at sort of pre-application stage, and it was ultimately sort of considered that it wouldn't be viable for sort of the retention of those buildings on site in terms of the significant repair work that would need to be undertaken to retain them, and ultimately it would require considerable sort of alteration to the scheme because of where they're actually located within the site. So that was sort of considered by us as a local planning authority, but we were satisfied that the public benefits that arise from the scheme through sort of the various Section 106 contributions and the fact that it is a site that's sort of allocated for housing, we're satisfied that the loss of those non-designated heritage assets wouldn't be so much of a significant impact. In terms of the existing stone building on site, again, this matter was raised with the applicant during the consideration. They said they would take it into consideration, but it couldn't be sort of agreed, and that they couldn't provide any sort of sufficient clearance on this at application stage because it would ultimately depend on the condition of the stonework once it was taken down. So that was the feedback that we received from the applicant on that.
Because I know, just on joke, I mean, people have used, I don't know what this stone, but interesting stone to make flower beds and so it doesn't have to be in the condition you would to make another structure. So
Question from Councillor Malcolm Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. I don't see anything wrong with this in the main. This is what you could call a high-density site, I think. We seem to have a full complement of 106 agreements, which is good to see in the affordable housing and whatnot. I'm just wondering about the public transport outside it, because as far as I know, Newbiggins very badly served with public transport, and anything we can do to help that is obviously going to reduce car journeys, certainly down into the village to get shopping and things like that. I'm just wondering why we haven't asked, we're doing work on a roundabout, agreed it's a problem roundabout, but it's a mile away, and we haven't got a bus running up and down. Maybe, something more local that is going to help these people, and that sort of avenue, and help our green philosophy and all the rest of it. But just some sort of help for the bus service or something, Why haven't we done that?
I can answer that one, if you want. Yeah. Members of this committee will see examples of where we do ask for contributions towards local bus services. I would point out, though, that this site is part of a settlement there are plans, longer term plans afoot for public transport improvements, and particularly for rail connectivity to the settlement as well. On this site, though, given that the distances, what distance is it from the town centre? 8 miles, yes.
Yes, 8.8 miles.
Yes. Is that on the basis of its distance to the high street and the closest shops, that it wasn't justifiable to require a contribution to local bus services on this site? Okay.
Can I just come back on that, because, you know, my estate, yeah, there's lots of more houses, I suppose, but it had an existing bus every 10 minutes, and yet we asked for the public transport contributions. So it just seems we don't have a cohesive policy across the whole thing.
Yeah.
You know?
What we do is we look, the local plan has allocated land primarily in locations that are sustainable, and this is part of that settlement hierarchy approach. It is within relatively close proximity to the town centre. I think it was the last committee that we sat in here where it was clear that the policy requirement for location wasn't met, and therefore we did ask for a bus contribution on it. So the highways team will advise on if it fits the spatial strategy, or if it doesn't, what was needed to make it sustainable. Okay.
Councillor Richard Dodd.
Yeah, much has been made of the roundabout. I'm fully aware that this roundabout is not a good roundabout when you're trying to get out from New Biggin. Maybe we should write to the Minister for Transport or whatever, you know, whoever's in charge of roads, and ask if we can have some money to fix this roundabout, or will we get the same as what Moore House got further down, where there was a scheme in place and it was pulled. So the only scheme I can think of would work would be some sort of traffic lights on that roundabout. But, you know, traffic lights are not a very popular thing for some people. Look at more.
Anything from the highways there? No?
Yeah, that's part of the proposals, is to investigate the potential for traffic lights on that roundabout to ease congestion.
Go on, Councillor Dodd. Councillor Jeffreid.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just remind everybody that we are supposed to be apolitical. I am quite happy to have a go, as you know, but this isn't the place to poke each other about policy, I don't think, because this is serious. This is people's lives. These are, we're trying to provide a service. So, you know, let's get back to talking about this. Can I just ask where are the 10 affordable houses spread across the estate, or they're all going to be in a lump? There seems looking at the plan, it just appeared to me that you couldn't get any more on there. So I mean, could the officers tell me or us what the maximum number on there is, if it's not 100?
Yeah.
And I was just going to ask about the construction phase, and do we know, are they going to put the road right to the top of the estate and start building from the top down, or is the intention to just start and go up? Because however long it takes, it's going to take more, it's 2 years or something to build these probably. You know, do you really want traffic bricks and people and all the rest of that for the 2? You know, you just buy your first house and you spend 2 years with traffic going past.
Yeah. Chair, I'll answer the first question, and Ryan touched on this in his presentation, in that back in the days of district council, when this site was first allocated, it was anticipated in the region of 50 or so houses. Local plan looked at it about 85. However, that's not a design process. What that is doing is, when we look at the total amount of housing land we need to allocate in the plan, we make some broad generic assumptions about the likely density, with the normal issue that sites out in a more rural location will be lower density, and those closer to an urban centre will be higher density. Okay. the important point here is there is no limit as such. There's no numerical limit. It's rather it's design-led. Okay. And the thing I'd ask you to keep in mind when we look at this site is that figure of 85 for the local plan was for the average house on a site like this. These are purposefully, and the applicant set out that these are intended to be, first-time buyer houses and smaller than perhaps the average that you would anticipate on a generic housing site. However, to counterbalance that, as Ryan said then, these do have front and rear gardens, and they are, and while they are first-time buyer houses, we think the density is appropriate for this site. So if a scheme had come forward on this site, as a worked example, for say, high-end bungalows, where the density would have been lower than the local plan figure, whereas these are intended to be both first-time buyer houses and affordable houses, it's logical that the density will be higher. So there's no fixed density, rather it's, you look at each application on its merits and look at the design. And I think Ryan said that with the layout and the space standards, and as well the offsets between the houses, we are satisfied with it. Okay. But there's no fixed rule for what is acceptable in terms, 100 isn't acceptable and 102 wouldn't be acceptable. It's based on design. Okay.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, Councillor Reid, just in terms of the affordable housing provision on site, there is 10 sort of affordable housing units proposed, and they're actually spread across the site. There's 3 units proposed sort of at the entrance to the site. There's another 3 units proposed within the central aspect of the site, and then there's 4 sort of units proposed towards the southern boundary. So yeah, they're ultimately sort of spread out within sort of the 100 houses proposed.
Martin?
Thank you, Chair. The applicant said that these were aimed at first-time buyers. So we can assume that over the coming years, once these houses are bought, there's going to be a lot of children through this site, living there, going through school, etc. So my question firstly is to highways, whether the routes to school have been assessed, whether they're safe, because I understand that some of the children from Newbrig and from this end go to Ashington, to the high school, which is quite a trek. So that's the first question. Second question is with regard to children's play facilities. I don't think there's anything on site, but I understand there's a play area to the in the estate to the northeast. Are there pedestrian links into that housing estate to the northeast? Permeability for the children to go through, and that's the questions. Yeah.
Yeah, just in terms of the play space, yeah, correct. There is open space proposed on site, but there's no play space provision proposed on site. That would ultimately be secured off-site via the open space contributions secured by the Section 106 agreement. So we're securing a contribution of 146,000 towards that off-site. In terms of the existing play space within sort of New Biggin as a whole, yeah, there is sort of a play park in the land to the north of the site. There is no pedestrian links between the site and that existing housing estate. Ultimately, because it's landlocked in terms of the residential gardens running along Spittal Road, there wouldn't actually be sort of any provision to sort of create pedestrian access between the two sites. But ultimately, there are existing footpaths in the area at the entrance to the estate and then at the entrance to Spittal Road, which it's presumed that sort of future occupiers would use to access that play space in the future.
It just looks to me as if at the northeast end of the site, potentially there could be a link made. Obviously, it's without the site boundary, but maybe some note to the applicant could be to see if something could be provided, because it would just have a safer permeability into that other housing estate. And the other question was around safe routes to school.
Well, you would have assessed it. It's actually assessed at safe consideration routes to school. Yeah, when we do assess it, that is the sort of thing that we look into. There's, depending on the distance to the school, it may be they'll have to use vehicles to get to the school. They can't walk just because of the the distance from the school to the actual development site. But we do look at the routes to schools nearby.
But looking at the application, there's nothing on there to improve any of those routes off-site improvements.
Yeah, could I answer this one spatially? Is part of the reason why the site is this is allocated site is that the spatial strategy of the local plan looks to locate residential land close to existing settlements for sustainability reasons. The existing highway network is assumed to be able to accommodate the implications of the growth, and what the highways team will look at is they look at highways issues from two basic issues. They look at capacity of the highway network and they look at road safety. Okay? And this has been assessed as being acceptable. Okay?
All right, Martin?
Yes, I just feel it's potentially a missed opportunity there, but yeah, that's what we've got.
Any more questions of the committee?
Make sure that everything in the 106 money is allocated.
Sorry?
Collected a lot of 106 money.
Yep.
It's been collected by
In Newbiggin.
Yeah.
How does Newbiggin access that money to make sure it uses it?
Yeah. 106 money is accessed by a variety of routes. So where we fund, as a general example, where we fund things like education or healthcare, that money is passported to the organisation who delivers it. But there's still a mechanism where we approve what it's spent on. So so for 106, we get reports and proposals to spend the money, and the money is released on that basis. Sometimes 106 money, because of the lack of schemes for, say, a particular issue, can't be spent perfectly close to the site. However, it's a case that we try and prioritise the 106 spend as close as reasonably practical to the site. But sometimes we have to amalgamate funds to make worthwhile schemes.
Any more questions, ladies and gentlemen? Could I have a proposal, please? Malcolm. And is that seconded? By Gordon Stewart. Anybody like to speak to the application this evening? Councillor Reid.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Robinson thinks this is the last planning meeting, but I did think there was another one. Because I hope there is another one, because I would have liked to have gone out in a blaze of glory rather than be faced with making a decision on this. Don't like it. It's too. It's just too dense. It's too. There's not enough. I mean, Gleeson build good quality houses that, I have friends who live in them, and they are good. But I just think there's too many on this site. I think just something better could have been done with this. I don't like the way that the road goes between the two existing buildings. The farmhouse is quite a nice, grand affair, and to turn it into 100 houses. I just wish there'd been a bit more thought about it. I mean, I obviously can't move refusal because there aren't any ground for refusal, and I guess I'm talking about personal taste really. But I just wish it could have been fewer and been a play area in there, or because what's been said is that there are going to be, if they're the first-time buyers, starter homes, people starting families, and all the rest of that stuff, there's going to be a lot of kids there. And where's the play park that I would be happy for my granddaughter or grandson to go out the front door and across the road and play in the park. I'm going to have to get, you know, my son or daughter's going to have to get in the car and drive somewhere to... So I just wish that I could have been more jubilant, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to abstain because I just don't like it.
Thank you. Liam.
Thank you, Chair. I feel very similar, actually. I can't support this application. I think it's right that officers decide what planning application comes forward, whether it meets planning policy. I think it's for the councils to decide whether we feel that fits the area. And I don't feel this fits the area for New Biggin. I think it's overdevelopment. I think there's far too many houses on this site. I think it's not in keeping with the area. So I think we should work together to try and find the reasons that can be refused in planning. I think overdevelopment is one of the areas. I think it's not in keeping with the surrounding areas. I think that's another planning policy that I don't think it meets as well. Lack of open space, lack of green space. I think the fact that we say it has a front and rear garden, I think that should be a given for any dwelling. I don't think that should be a selling point for these houses. I think it should be a given. I think what we saw on the screen there was just a concrete jungle. And I don't think that we should be saying that it's okay just because these are starter homes that's acceptable. I don't think it is. I think there should be more green space in this area. And I do not think this is right and fitting with this area. So I can't support this application. I hope fellow councillors don't support this application as well. I think Gleeson need to go back to the drawing board, reduce the number of units in this area and give some green space and let us provide homes that people want to live in. I just think it's not right.
Any other contributions? Caroline. Caroline, for you.
Thank you, Chair. So I, on one hand, welcome more houses because I think New Biggin does need them for the residents that are currently there and some new builds because it hasn't had some development in this capacity for a while. And we want people to be able to stay in the areas where they're born and raised. But I can't support this on the grounds of when we talk about the transport network and capacity and road safety, I think the road is already at capacity before we put another 100 houses there. And the road safety, including the pavements and the surrounding areas, the last planning that we sat in, we were talking about local amenity. And if we put 100 people, well, sorry, 100 people living in 100 houses, what fantasy world is that? If there was 100 houses built here, to be able to go and do your weekly shop, at the moment, New Biggin cannot sustain a weekly shop because it hasn't got supermarkets. It's got the brands, but it hasn't got somewhere big enough to actually go and do your weekly shop to be able. So you are going to have to get your car, or you're going to have to get it delivered. It is going to have an impact on that highway, which I already believe is at capacity. All the things that make New Biggin amazing to want to live there, if you're going to want to walk to the beach, to the park, walk your children to school in the morning safely, actually then pavements along the side of that very busy road are not currently suitable. So unless at the planning stage we start looking at these issues, they come back to haunt us later through petitions committee. I do think this would be an opportunity to look at some of the other routes within New Biggin. New Biggin is a fantastic place to live, visit and everything else. And I think if we can support the community to have better access and look at some of the developments, because people do want to live here, but I fear that without putting the transport and really nailing down the transport plan, it'll come back again via enforcement. The police are going to have nothing but issues, and we're going to have stuff coming back through all the various committees because people don't feel safe getting the kids to school or pulling out. So I personally, I will be voting against if there's not more put into this, because I feel it is going to be a problem down the road. No pun intended.
Director of Planning?
Yeah, can I just advise members on something you've heard me said before? Highway concerns are often cited for reasons, opposition to planning applications. Okay. We need to be really objective on this, okay? And you turn down on housing, you turn down housing schemes on transport grounds for two reasons. And that is highway capacity and highway safety, primarily. Okay. Bear in mind this is an allocated site, so when the local plan was done, overall infrastructure was looked at in terms of what was needed in the area, and it went through a process of evaluation, and the land was allocated on the basis it could be served, it could be developed adequately. Okay? We then have to look at what precise scheme we have in front of us, and what we do then, we apply the test, which is the severity test, which is laid out in national legislation, which says that you only refuse on the basis of highway capacity if there is an identified severe impact. Okay? There is neither a severe impact identified, and there is a contribution towards improving an existing issue at the moment. Okay? My advice would be that to refuse on the basis of highway impact would not stand up to appeal. And, and while this shouldn't ever put you off, there's a risk of having costs awarded against us for that reason. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
I've heard what other people have got to say, but I think what we've got is what's in front of us. And I think we've said that before on another application. And whilst it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and I had concerns about how many houses it is, families and couples are desperate for homes. And Gleeson is a very popular house builder that I know that these houses will sell like hotcakes because they do get snapped up. And the areas that they have built houses, some have been better than others, but some are really homes for people that need them. So I will be supporting this application. I appreciate it's not popular with everybody.
Yeah,
I don't think there's any material considerations.
Could just add, for context, I know we've all been through the report, the presentation, but the parish council is supportive of the scheme as tabled today, and they see it as meeting an important need.
Any other contributions? Just a little one from the chairman. I do support this high density application because it's aimed at low and middle income earners, first time houses. And yes, you know, they're not palatial, they haven't got big gardens, there's not a lot of open space. But that's the very nature of the builds. We're building small houses that have got fairly small gardens, but it does replicate what happens in the rest of Newbick, and you've got a lot of rows of houses if you look at the built form. So it does replicate what's there already. And yes, I'm supportive. Could I ask Councillor Robinson to wind up, please?
I've listened to the concerns and I understand them. And I've listened to what you've said there, Chair, and I agree with you. I agree with Anna there. To turn it down on some of the things that's been mentioned, like Rob says, is going to be a dangerous strategy. It's not what we want to see. However, you can understand it in the context of it being aimed at first-time buyers. That's obviously got price points all through it. And, you know, if you don't accept it, you're relegating all these first-time buyers to not being able to get on the housing ladder. You're relegating, and there will be young families, not being able to move on, move out, and, you know, start for themselves. So, somewhere like Newbiggin, to get a development like this, I think it's phenomenal. You don't often see it. As I said, it's obviously, there's price points all over the thing, but we surely can't turn it down. We've got to give young people a chance. Yeah. Right.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, all those in favour of this application?
Seven.
All those against?
4.
Those abstaining? 1. That application is carried. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our business for this evening. I've got no urgent business. Thank you for your contributions and your thoughtful decisions. Thank you.
good debate. So no, yeah.
Yes, we'll miss you, Councillor Reid.